Perseus cut off Medusa's head. Her sisters, Stheno and Euryale, woke up alive. They were immortal, and they chased him. Perseus escaped because the cap of Hades made him invisible. In the main surviving account, they failed to catch him, and Medusa's head stays with Perseus. Later ancient versions kept going. They preserve the sisters' cry, turn it into music, and even tie their chase to Mycenae. That is the trail we can still follow. The reason they survive begins with one small detail in Hesiod. He names 3 Gorgon sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. Hesiod places the Gorgons beyond ocean, near the Hesperides, at the far edge of the mythic world. Then he separates the sisters with one line: Medusa is mortal. Stheno and Euryale are deathless and do not grow old. That difference controls the whole aftermath. Perseus can kill Medusa because she is the one sister who can die. Her 2 sisters are still there when the killing is over. The famous ending removes 1 Gorgon from a family of 3. It leaves 2 immortal Gorgons behind. Hesiod does not give us a childhood scene for them. He does not tell us whether Medusa feared being mortal or whether her sisters ever talked about losing her. Those scenes would be modern inventions. The old poem gives us enough without them. 3 sisters, 1 mortal life, and 2 sisters who will survive whatever happens to Medusa. That makes Perseus's equipment easier to understand, too. He is going into the home of creatures he cannot fight like ordinary enemies. He needs a way to look without looking directly. He needs a way to carry the head. He needs a way to move fast. And most important for the aftermath, he needs a way to disappear. A later handbook, traditionally attributed to Apollodorus, gives the clearest full version of that scene. It says Perseus reaches the Gorgons while they are asleep. He carries the kibisis, a special bag for Medusa's head. He has winged sandals. He has a cutting weapon. He has the cap of Hades. When he wears the cap, he can see others while they cannot see him. Athena guides his hand. Perseus looks at Medusa through the reflection in a bronze shield instead of facing her directly. Then he cuts off her head. Pegasus and Chrysaor spring from Medusa's neck. Perseus puts the head into the kibisis. Then the 2 surviving sisters wake. There is almost no delay. Stheno and Euryale start chasing him. The same later account gives the sisters frightening bodies. Their heads are wrapped with serpentine scales. They have great tusks, brazen hands, and golden wings. Their gaze can turn a viewer to stone. These are powerful beings, and both of them are immortal. Perseus still has the one advantage that decides the chase. They cannot see him. The cap hides him from their eyes. The sisters can fly. They can keep searching. They can rush after the direction he went, but they cannot seize a man they cannot find. That is how the immediate chase fails. An older poem, The Shield of Heracles, describes the chase as an image worked onto a shield. Perseus is flying. His winged sandals are on his feet. The Gorgon's head is inside a silver bag across his back. The cap of Hades sits over him. He is stretched forward in flight. Behind him come the Gorgons. They rush after him, trying to seize him. Their jaws grind. Their eyes glare. Serpents hang from them with flickering tongues. Even the shield beneath the seam seems to ring under their feet. That old image tells us something simple. The pursuit was never a quiet footnote. It was one of the big physical moments of the myth. Remember what kind of scene this is. The poem is describing an image on the shield of Heracles. So we are hearing a poet describe a crafted object that already contains the chase. Perseus is frozen in flight, yet every detail pushes forward. The bag swings on his back. The Gorgons press from behind. The metal beneath them rings. Their mouths, eyes, snakes, and feet all point toward one thing: getting hold of him. That makes the sisters useful to the artist. You can understand the whole problem in one glance. Perseus has the head. The sisters are alive. The distance between them is the only thing keeping him safe. Perseus has already won the killing. Now he has to survive the family that remains. And the sisters have already lost Medusa. Now they are trying to stop the man who is carrying her head away. The old poem never gives them a speech. It does not tell us what exact plan they have if they catch him. It says they rush after Perseus and want to seize him. That is enough. Their first act after Medusa's death is pursuit. Ancient pottery gives us the same action in a different form. An early 7th century BCE amphora from Eleusis shows the aftermath with brutal clarity. Perseus is moving away. 2 Gorgons run after him. Behind them lies Medusa's headless body. Look at the order of the bodies in that scene. Medusa is behind, her sisters are in the middle. Perseus runs ahead. The vase cannot tell us what Stheno or Euryale is thinking. It cannot tell us whether they looked back at the body. It cannot tell us whether they planned to chase Perseus for 1 minute or for years. What it can show is movement. The 2 surviving Gorgons move away from Medusa's body, and after Perseus, who has already taken the head, the scene has already split Medusa in 2 directions. Her body remains. Her head travels. The running pose helps make that action easy to read. Greek artists often bent the Gorgon's knees sharply as if both legs were driving at once. The body turns sideways and runs across the surface. The huge Gorgon face can still turn outward toward the person looking at the vase. The pose is sometimes called neolauf. For this story, the art term is less important than the effect. These sisters do not look settled. They look caught in speed, and the Eleusis vase gives the editor something rare. 4 parts of the aftermath can sit inside 1 frame. There is the dead body, there are the 2 survivors, there is the escaping killer, and there is the missing head, already removed from the center of the family. Put the old poem beside the Eleusis vase, and the chase becomes even clearer. The poem keeps Perseus in flight with the bag and the cap, while the Gorgons close behind him. The vase gives us something the poem cannot. Medusa's body still lying in the scene, so the 2 early witnesses point at the same first aftermath from different angles. One shows the pressure behind Perseus. The other shows what the sisters have just left behind. Neither one gives them a later home. Neither one gives them a second adventure. But both make the first answer hard to miss. After Medusa dies, her sisters move toward Perseus. That head soon becomes much more famous than either surviving sister. Perseus carries it inside the cabyssus. In later parts of his story, he uses it as a weapon. Eventually he gives it to Athena, and the Gorgon face becomes tied to her armor. We do not need to follow every stop on the head's journey here. That belongs to Medusa's head. For Stheno and Euryale, the consequence is simpler. They lose control of it. The thing they chase keeps moving farther away, while the surviving story stays with Perseus. Greek artists keep returning to the Gorgon face. It appears on pottery, armor, architecture, jewelry, and metalwork. The objects make that spread easy to picture. On temple buildings, Gorgon faces appear on pediments and roof decoration. On drinking cups, the face can sit inside the bowl and appear as the wine level drops. On bronze vessels, jewelry, helmets, shields, and greaves, the same staring face becomes part of the object itself. That is a massive change in scale. Medusa begins as one body in a remote Gorgon home. After the killing, her face can appear above a temple, inside a cup, on a soldier's armor, or against Athena's chest. Every new object carries the result of the sisters' failed pursuit. The head they could not recover becomes something Greek artists can repeat almost anywhere. Stheno and Euryale survive differently. They appear most clearly as a pair in the chase. Their bodies run, their mouths open, their faces stay dangerous. They remain connected to the moment after the killing. That gives us an odd split. Medusa dies, but her head keeps gaining new places and new uses. Her sisters cannot die, but their own story quickly becomes harder to follow. Then, several centuries before the later handbook of Apollodorus, a poet gives us something the chase scenes cannot. He gives us their sound. In 490 BCE, Pindar wrote a victory song for a musician named Midas. Midas came from Acragas. He had won a music contest at Pytho, the sanctuary at Delphi. His instrument was the aulos, a reed pipe. A player blew into its reeds and made a sharp, carrying sound. Picture the setting first. A contest, a musician breath forced through reeds, and a crowd listening. The date helps us keep the sources straight. Pindar is much earlier than the handbook that gives us the sleeping Gorgons and the invisible escape in one smooth story. So when Pindar talks about the sisters, we are hearing an older Greek poet use the Gorgon pursuit for a different purpose. He is praising a real contest victory. That gives the myth a new room to enter. No cave, no chase, no bronze shield. Now there is a performer standing before listeners with reed pipes in his hands. Then Pindar reaches back to Medusa. He says Athena heard the terrible cry of the Gorgons after Perseus killed their sister. The poem describes their lament as it pours out while Perseus is escaping. And then one sister becomes clear inside the sound. Euryale. Pindar says Athena hears a shrill cry from EURYALE'S moving jaws. She shapes that sound into music for mortals. The poem calls it a many-voiced, many-headed strain, something that can be played on reeds and heard at contests. Now the aftermath has moved somewhere new. The sisters fail to catch Perseus, but their cry reaches a human performance. For EURYALE, this is one of the strongest individual moments that survives. Most early scenes keep the two sisters together. They are the Gorgons behind Perseus. Pindar gives EURYALE her own name, her own mouth, and her own sound. Stheno stays inside the pair. EURYALE steps forward for a moment because the poem needs the voice coming from her, and Pindar keeps two sides of the sisters together. Their cry is grief. It comes after Medusa's death. Their cry is also frightening. These are still Gorgons, still dangerous, still part of a monster story. The poem does not force us to choose between those two things. Stheno and Euryale can be terrifying beings and sisters grieving Medusa at the same time. That is a much richer picture than turning them into simple villains or simple victims. The same Athena who helps Perseus in the killing story has a different role here. In Pindar's poem, she hears the Gorgon cry and turns it into music. Keep those source moments separate. The detailed sleeping scene and invisible escape come from the later handbook. The musical story comes from Pindar, centuries earlier. But together, they create a strange result. Perseus escapes because the sisters cannot see him. EURYALE survives in another tradition because Athena hears her. And now the map changes again. The earlier strong sources give us a chase and then stop following the sisters. Pindar turns their cry into music. But a much later mythographic text tries something bolder. It gives the chase a place to end. A work now called On Rivers survives under the name Pseudo-Plutarch. It was probably written somewhere around the 2nd or early 3rd century CE, long after Pindar and long after the early pursuit images. In one short story it says Stheno and Euryale kept pursuing Perseus after he killed Medusa. It calls them the sisters of the murdered woman. It says they followed him as the killer of their sister. Then the story takes them to a hill connected with Mycenae. There, according to this late version, the sisters finally give up hope of catching Perseus, and they bellow. The text says they make that sound out of love for Medusa. Then it goes even further. It claims the sound helped give Mycenae its name. If we accepted that story at face value, the title would suddenly have a very neat answer. Stheno and Euryale chase Perseus until they reach the hill later tied to Mycenae. They realize they cannot catch him. They cry out for Medusa. Their pursuit ends there, but this is exactly where source quality becomes part of the story. On Rivers is a strange book. Modern scholars treat it carefully. The writer sometimes misidentifies sources and sometimes appears to invent the authorities he names. The supposed earlier writer credited for this Mycenae story is not secure enough to carry the claim by himself. The same little book also gives another explanation for the name Mycenae. In that version, Perseus loses the cap of his sword scabbard on the mountain, and that object gives the city its name. Pausanias, writing about Greece, also connects Mycenae with Perseus, but he gives other explanations involving the scabbard cap or a mushroom. There is another reason Mycenae is such an interesting place for this lake branch. Other Greek traditions connect Perseus himself with the founding of Mycenae. Pausanias records other stories about the city's name. One uses the cap of Perseus's sword scabbard. Another uses a mushroom he finds there. So the same city collects several different explanations. One story ties the name to Perseus and his equipment. The late pseudo-Plutarch story ties it to the sound of Stheno and Euryale grieving as they fail to catch him. Those stories cannot all be treated as one event. They show how one famous place could pull different Perseus traditions toward itself. So the Crying Sisters story is a real ancient text. The destination inside it is still a late and shaky branch. That changes how we should use it. It does not give us a secure map route for Stheno and Euryale. It shows us something else. Later ancient storytellers were still bothered by the same open space we are. The older chase has no clear arrival. A later writer gives it one. The older texts do not tell us where the sisters finally stop. A later writer puts them at Mycenae and gives their stopping point a sound. And look at what that late writer chooses to preserve. He does not give Stheno a husband. He does not give Euryale a child. He does not create a new kingdom for them. He keeps the same three things the older tradition already cared about: pursuit, Medusa, and the sisters' cry. Even when the story grows, it grows out of the chase. By the 5th century CE, the poet Nonnus is still doing something similar. Nonnus looks back at Perseus as a fleeing hero. Stheno is remembered through the hiss of her snakes. Euryale is remembered through her bellowing voice. Again, the sisters return as sound and danger. No long second life appears. No settled home takes over the story. Nonnus reaches back to the old pursuit and makes Perseus hear them behind him. That late image fits the pattern we have been following all along. The sisters survive Medusa. They act immediately. They fail to catch Perseus. Then later writers keep pulling them back toward the same moment. The chase becomes their strongest narrative identity. The cry becomes Euryale's strongest individual identity. And their immortality creates the final problem. Hesiod says Stheno and Euryale are deathless and ageless. That means the ancient tradition leaves them alive after the point where it stops telling us much about their lives. We should keep that boundary clean. The reliable early material does not give them a final death. It does not give them a marriage or children. It does not give them a second major battle with Perseus or Athena. It does not give them a secure later home. The Mycenae story gives one possible late ending to the pursuit. Its source is too shaky to make that the final answer for the whole tradition. So what survives when we put the sources in order? First comes the family fact. Medusa can die. Her sisters cannot. Then comes the physical aftermath. Stheno and Euryale pursue Perseus. Then comes the failure. The cap hides him and the head escapes with him. Then comes the visual memory. Early art keeps the sisters running behind Perseus while Medusa's body lies behind them. Then comes the sound. Pindar turns the Gorgon lament into music and singles out EURYALE'S cry. Then comes the late attempt to close the gap. Pseudo-Plutarch pushes the sisters toward Mycenae. There they give up and bellow for Medusa. The source is too unstable to make that a secure ending. Then Nonnus brings them back once more as hiss and bellow behind a fleeing Perseus. After that, the road is still open. That gives Stheno and Euryale a strange fate. Medusa is the sister who can die, and she becomes the most famous Gorgon. Her face moves on to shields, buildings, vessels, jewelry, and armor. Stheno and Euryale are the sisters who cannot die, yet the ancient stories give them less and less room once Perseus escapes. Their immortality keeps them alive. It does not give them a full biography, and the sources never ask us to forget that they are dangerous. These are Gorgons. Ancient poetry describes them as terrifying. They rush at Perseus. Their teeth grind, their snakes hiss. Their cry can be made into wild music. At the same time, the tradition keeps Medusa at the center of what they do. They wake because she has been killed. They chase the man carrying her head. Pindar gives them a lament. The late Mycenae story says they bellow out of love for their sister. Danger and grief sit in the same family. That is why the simple hero versus monster version feels smaller after you follow the sisters. Perseus is still the hero of his own story. He has been sent on a deadly mission. Divine tools help him survive creatures whose gaze can kill. Stheno and Euryale are still monsters in the source tradition. Their pursuit is dangerous enough that Perseus needs invisibility to escape it. But they are also the two people left alive when Medusa dies. The same cap that saves Perseus closes their chance to reach him. That contrast also changes the way the chase feels from each side. For Perseus, the cap works exactly as it should. He has completed the mission. He has the head sealed in the bag. He can move through the air and stay hidden. Every tool pushes him toward escape. For Stheno and Euryale, those same tools remove every chance to finish the pursuit. They cannot force him to turn around. They cannot use their gaze on a body they cannot see. They cannot take the bag from him. The farther he moves, the farther Medusa's head moves with him. The chase ends without a fight, because the fight has been designed away. The same head that proves his victory is the part of their sister they never get back in the main surviving account. And the same scream that belongs to a monster becomes in Pindar something humans can perform through reeds centuries later. Now go back to the Eleusis amphora. Perseus is ahead. Stheno and Euryale are running behind him. Medusa's body is farther back. At the start, that scene looks like the final escape of a hero after killing a monster. After following the sisters, it carries more information. The dead sister has been split into a body and a head. The immortal sisters are caught between those two pieces. The man with the head is getting away. And the clearest ancient action Stheno and Euryale ever receive is happening right there. So what happened to Medusa's sisters after Perseus killed her? They survived. They chased Perseus. In the main surviving account, the cap of Hades hid him, and they failed to catch him or recover Medusa's head. Early art kept that pursuit alive. Pindar kept their grief alive in sound and gave Euryale's cry a second life in music. A much later and less reliable tradition tried to extend the chase to Mycenae, where the sisters finally gave up and cried for Medusa. And then the sources grow quiet again. There is no secure ancient ending where Stheno and Euryale die. There is no secure final home. There is no clean second adventure. They are immortal sisters whose story becomes clearest at the exact moment they lose the only sister who could die. On the vase, they are still running. In Pindar, Euryale is still crying out. In the late Mycenae story, both sisters are still calling for Medusa. Across the sources, the details change. The same loss keeps coming back. Medusa dies. Stheno and Euryale have to live after her.